Okay, welcome everyone. It's Kevin with VintiqueSound.com, and today I wanted to just give everyone a quick little update in case you weren't aware. There was a sale put on by Steinberg for Cubase 12, and they were offering some free plugins along with that sale. And I initially thought that these plugins and stuff were only available if you were purchasing that upgrade during that sale as a kind of incentive to actually upgrade. But in fact, if you already own Cubase 12, then you are able to get access to these plugins as well. So if you go to the website, you'll see a more detailed breakdown of what this entails. So each plugin or VST instrument has its own assignment, so to speak. The Arturia, for example, CS80, is only available if you have or upgrade to Cubase Pro 12. So it's not available to people with only Artist or only Elements. And you'll see the breakdown here. Melodyne 5 is available to Artist and Pro, etc., etc. And then, of course, there is a small catch where you have to create an account with these companies if you don't already have, and then activate the plugin. Steinberg will provide the activation code for you, and you either install the software that downloads the VST plugins and activates, or you go to the website to add the license there and download VSTs and whatnot. So altogether, it's a pretty simple process. I went ahead and grabbed all of these plugins, and I wanted to just demonstrate what all of these plugins sound like so that you get a sense whether it's worth, going through the trouble of creating an account, activating, etc. So as you would have heard, the Amp Electrica was playing the chords. The CS80 was playing the more lead synth sound. The drums, I just used a standard Groove Agent kit. And lastly, the dirty tape I added to each individual instruments. So the drums separately, the CS80 synths separately, and the keys separately to have their own setting as far as drive goes, as well as the sort of tape wobble, and as well as the low cutoff. Oh, and actually the stereo mode as well. These are slightly different between these to create a sort of mix with separation between the elements. And then actually, lastly, is the Pfizer clip is at the end, and I wanted to demonstrate with the Pro L limiter exactly what kind of happens to the peaks of, let's say, from the drums and stuff. It kind of just shaves those peaks off going into the limiter, and the limiter doesn't have to do that much. So let's dive into the dirty tape real quick. So I'll demonstrate with each instrument soloed, and I'll show you the different settings, what can be achieved here. So with the drums, with bypass, you can hear the high end is really quite bright and brittle almost. This plugin, you can't decide how much of a high filter roll-off is going to happen. Is just one setting essentially. You can adjust the low cut settings here. And you can get quite extreme. But yeah, there's basically one high-end frequency roll-off setting. The drive, if you crank it, has a really nice saturation, almost like a real tape machine or a real analog device. I really like it. It reacts really well with transients, I find, and with the kick drum especially. This setting down here is the wow and flutter. You can get really dirty. It's not obvious how much it's affecting pitch on the drums, but I'll show you later on the other two instruments. Then you also have a simple output volume meter that you can back off from 0 dBs. You can't add extra volume. And then I'll show you the decoupled and normal stereo modes for the other two instruments because it's not quite obvious with the drums here. So with the synth lead part, let's do a bypass here. So with it bypassed, obviously it's a little bit more full and lots more clarity in the top end, and it's quite mono and very centered. And this decoupled mode actually kind of does something with the stereo image, I believe. Let me play it again with it switched on and off. You can hear it kind of wobble between left and right slightly, almost like an auto pan, but in an interesting way. And if I increase this clean to bad, it's going to increase that wow and flutter and whatnot. You can hear it gets a little bit more stereo as well. So obviously there's the wow and the flutter, which affects the pitch, but it also kind of moves around a little bit more. So this is sensitive to the decoupled mode here. And then with the actual keys here, it's actually easier to hear the wow and the flutter, I believe. And then lastly, with the keys here, it's a little bit more obvious with the low cut in this instance, so I'll bypass it. So obviously there's already some tremolo and auto pan on the instrument. This adds maybe just a little bit of extra wow and flutter and stereo width stuff going on. And then obviously, as I mentioned, there is this low cut filtering, which I am using on both these instruments to clean up and create a bit of a mix and a blend between all of these things. The drums I left untouched, so they have the most low end, followed by the chorded keys, which have roughly 100 or so hertz roll off, and then roughly 250 kind of range rolled off for the lead synth part. So all together, with and without. So I really love this plugin. The one thing, though, that I kind of wish is that you can have some control over that high-end frequency roll-off. It is quite an exaggerated effect, and it may not be exactly what I want in every song. So if there was an added high-cut type of filter just like this, it'd be a little bit more well-suited and well-rounded for all use of mixing. Now, fire the clip. I'm going to show you on the Pro L because it's just easy to do so. So when I have it bypassed, you'll see with the kick drum and the snare drum, all those bigger transients come in and the limiter has to work fairly hard. With the clipper, you'll see on this meter, this is the gain reduction that it's doing. It's basically shaving off the transients and any audio signal that comes through above a certain threshold. And then it shows however many decibels is being reduced or shaved off. I have it more towards a hard knee setting, and that's basically shaving off the peak. The limiter is then not having to do any of that limiting because it's being limited by the clipper. If we also look at the supervision, so I've bypassed the limiter now, so all we're seeing is the stereo output. So without, you'll see the same or similar kind of transients here. They're actually just being shaved off. Now, this also comes with a few different oversampling modes. You can go all the way up to apparently 1024 times oversampling. I'm not sure how much better it gets beyond like 4, 8, 16. That's not a typical thing for plugins. There's an eco mode and a high quality mode. And if you're not familiar with oversampling, it's basically just a way of increasing the bit depth to prevent any digital aliasing or any kind of aliasing from processing in the digital realm. Clipping and distortion are often the two biggest culprits for creating or inducing some aliasing of some kind. So it is nice for any limiter plugin, for instance, to have oversampling, any distortion, and any clipper plugins to have oversampling to prevent unwanted effects from doing the processing. Okay, so that's that. And obviously you have heard these two instruments. I'm going to say right now that the Amped Electrica is actually, it's really, really nice. Really, it sounds great. There's a lot of cool features here. There's, you can see on the screen, this is the things that you can tweak on the instrument. And here are some of the effects that you can tweak. And there's a whole bunch of presets that come along with it. So that's great. And then the CS80 it's been around for a while. This is the V4, I believe it is. It also has a whole bunch of presets on it. And then there's just a whole host of different controls. If you're familiar with this device and are able to kind of create your own patches, then kudos to you. I haven't messed around with this too much, but it certainly has a cool vibe to it. And I really like it. I like both of those instruments a lot, actually. So that's it for those. The last bit that I'm going to demonstrate, which I did not actually use in this song. I couldn't find a good vocal or any demonstration for the Melodyne. But basically, to be aware, this is the Elements version, or the very limited version. If we go back, Essential, sorry. So there's a lot of tools that are not available. So you only have the zoom tool, the scroll tool, and the regular main tool, which means you can adjust the pitch up and down. And this here, if you just click and drag, it's basically one step up and down. And then you can, on a Windows, hold down the Alt key and you can do the fine adjustments. And then if you can see here, the tool does change when you hover between different notes. So you can actually move it's kind of like, here, let me just grab this tool here. It's like the freeform warp tool here in Cubase, where you can kind of move the audio around. It's basically the same kind of tool. And this, what I have here is the audio event. I'm actually using the Melodyne extension from the ARA2 format. There is also an actual plugin, so a VST plugin, that you can use as well. So these are two different ways of using Melodyne.
Summer breeze.
So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do not have Cubase 12 yet, this is a great time to get in on a few of these plugins and get in with a sweet deal. There's quite a few different new features from Cubase that I am very, very happy with. For instance, that free warp tool that I believe I was demonstrating, you can free warp on the actual timeline and not just within the editor window that pops up separately from your actual Cubase project. That is super, super handy. It also is available for multi-track, so that's, again, just super handy if you're, especially if you're doing like a multi-track drum recording. And obviously quite a few different features that I'm just not going to dive into. So thank you for watching. Take care and bye-bye.